Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, Connor. With me, as always, it's Mr. Phil.
Hello.
Hello, Phil. How does it happen that weeks will go by, weeks of drudgery and torment, and then suddenly we get marginally excited for like a UFC fight night? That event happens. It's pretty much full of bangers. And then we're like, I can't wait to talk about it. Oh, wait. We're suddenly smack in the middle of a whole selection of interesting fights, many of which are next weekend. It's feast or famine in the fight schedule world.
All thanks to the magic of Mexico.
They do have magic down there, actually, I've heard.
I saw the cartoons that they were showing in the Sphere. It was something about how the warrior spirit is integral to who Mexicans are as a people.
Yeah, something profound like that. That's right. Next weekend, we have another UFC Noche event. Diego Lopez was a big hit last time. He's back again. This time against lone undefeated fighting nerd, Jean Silva. That team.
The nerdiest nerd.
The nerdiest of them all. A real geek, Jean Silva.
Yep.
So that's a great main event. There's a couple other stuff on, other things on this card that might be worth investigating, but I doubt we're going to have time. Because in addition to all the exciting stuff that happened last weekend that we want to talk about, some of which may make it into a bonus episode, there was so much of it, we also have Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford happening next weekend. A true super fight in the world of boxing.
Yep.
And based on our preliminary discussion, a fight that is going to prove very difficult for us to concretely figure out.
No kidding.
So we're going to get into that, I think in our second segment, talk about Canelo Crawford. We're going to start off here talking about Lopez versus Silva, next weekend's UFC main event. And I think at the end of the show, we're going to try to cover as much of last week's UFC Paris card and its main event, Nassourdine Imavov versus Caio Borralho, as we can. But I want to return to something I just mentioned, to highlight the burden that is on Jean Silva's broad shoulders here. Because he is a member of the Fighting Nerds. All of them, obsessed, all of them avid members of various fandoms. Jean Silva, I believe, is really into Sudoku. I think that's his big thing. Sudoku and Scrabble. He's actually a competitive online Scrabble player. Would you believe it?
Yes, he strikes me as exactly the type.
But he is now the only member of that team, particularly the Big Four, who has yet to lose in the UFC. As a user whose name I forget said to me on Twitter last weekend, the Fighting Nerds are getting stuffed into the locker.
Mm-hmm.
Carlos Prates lost to Ian Gary, beaten up by another Irish jock. Many such tales. Caio got mostly blown apart on the counter by Nassourdine Imavov, and Mauricio Hufi got crushed by Benoit Saint-Denis. Both of those latter two last weekend. So now Jean Silva stands alone. And we're going to be putting the entire reputation of that team to the test this weekend. What do you think, Phil?
Okay, I mean, I think there's a very obvious pick to make here, right? Which is still, despite any of the problems of the Fighting Nerds, to pick Jean Silva. Because he's so incredibly potent.
Yeah.
He's so quick. He's such a natural fighter. And Diego Lopez has not been looking that great lately.
He's been looking like
he's
Diego
increasing...
Lopez, I would say. He looks the same.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. This is the ascending to a featherweight gatekeeper status,
right?
And then being used as such, which means like losing most of your fights. Part of the contract that Diego Lopez unwittingly signed with the matchmakers.
Well, it's the one loss to Volkanovski, but yeah, he's got a heavyweight kind of path happening perhaps here. We may have seen the beginning of that turn because it happens in the corporate world too, right, Phil? You ascend to the level of your incompetence.
Yeah.
And Diego Lopez is now he shot his way to a title shot and found himself in a fight where he was completely outclassed, but was nevertheless visibly dangerous and difficult to fight. I think that's just the book on Diego Lopez. Not a very subtle or creative fighter. Very, very difficult to deal with one way or the other.
Yeah, he defeated Brian Ortega, and as is the way of these things, he is Brian Ortega now.
Yes, he caught it.
Yep. Yeah, I was being a bit mean to him. Like you said, he's only really got that one loss, but also his wins have not aged super well. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's basically his high ranking and the title shot essentially hinges on that Brian Ortega fight.
Yeah. Yeah, there was Dan Ige before that, but it was a very short notice Dan Ige. I mean, yeah, there's no question. Diego Lopez got a little bit of momentum, and they rushed his ass to a title shot because people loved him, and he was exciting.
Yep. And, and John Silva is kind of the coming man at the moment. Mm-hmm. Like, as I said, obviously, like, perhaps the most physically gifted fighter in either this division or maybe like the sport at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah. You know what kind of nerd he really is? He's a nerd like Data from Star Trek The Next Generation.
Oh, yeah. So
particularly the part where he has the strength of 20 men.
Yes.
That particular trait of nerdiness, he has it in spades.
But yeah, I'm not so sure about like certain elements of this fight. One is that I think it is essentially a guarantee that this fight is going to be fun.
Absolutely.
This fight is going to be violent, but I think it's going to take some time. It might take some time to be fun because Lopez has increasingly been leaning into the idea that he is a counterpuncher who basically hangs his chin out as he marches forward, offers you to hit it, and then just throws 3 or 4 sharp, powerful punches when you come in to get him, which makes him, immensely scary. And Brian Ortega kind of just ran into that wood chipper and over again. He was like, okay, so I need to set up a jab on this guy. Oh my God, he just hit me 3 times. And then he was like, well, I should 1-2 him next time. Oh my God, he just hit me 3 times. And then he did that for the entire fight. Is John Silva given a kind of aggressive counterpuncher, is John Silva going to lead on him that much? I'm not sure that he will. John Silva doesn't like leading that much. He likes making the other person miss and look dumb.
Yep.
So I don't think I think this might be like quite a cagey opening to this fight.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, there is no question it is a fight which will, before too long, boil over into something much more chaotic.
Or it might be like bursts of incredible violence, and then like lulls of not that much happening.
Yeah, I could see a bit of that too. I want to talk about Jean Silva, and I want to talk about him in the context of the sort of shared traits of the Fighting Nerds team members. And obviously they're not all the same guy, like Mauricio Hufi has some things more in common with Jean Silva and Carlos Praches than either or any of them do with Caio Borralho. One defining characteristic, though, which I think all of them have exhibited in one way or another, and was, in particular, I think the death knell for Borralho last weekend, is the lack of combination punching ability, or desire to throw combination punches. They are a team of pot shotters. But I think Jean Silva does stand out as actually having both the physical abilities and the mental acuity, but also the subtle skills to actually make a pot-shotting style work for him. One thing that stands out about Jean Silva is that he is a very attentive and disciplined positional fighter. Which is it sounds like a weird thing to say, because you watch something like that fight with Bryce Mitchell, and I use the word disciplined, and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? He basically, he fought Bryce Mitchell as if Bryce Mitchell never ever could beat him, and then proved that that was true. He was out there just fucking around and trying to land crazy trick shots, and how is that different from Mauricio Hufi? Who we critiqued for being a one weird trick fighter just a week ago. But the thing with Jean Silva is that he pays a lot of attention to both the distance between himself and his opponent and the angles of attack. And if you watch Jean Silva, particularly when he's in his kind of back foot mode, he makes a lot of small, subtle adjustment steps all the time. He is never allowing an opponent to set up in front of him for free or just get a clear line of attack for free. He is always paying attention to the distance and the angle between himself and his opponent. And that alone makes his almost complete lack of combination attacks much less of a problem. Because to force engagements with Jean Silva, you have to take huge risks. You have to throw with a lot of volume yourself. And if you do, it's going to look like that Drew Dober fight. That's the most aggressive guy Jean Silva has fought, really. And he crushed and embarrassed Drew Dober. There were a couple hiccups where Dober would surprise him. There was a Superman punch at one point, which caught Silva off guard. Distance closing suddenly, a little deception. Also a strike nobody throws anymore. But for the most part, Dober just could not line himself up with Jean Silva. I think this is just something to appreciate about Jean Silva that might go undervalued, because the physical and mental qualities that don't necessarily have anything to do with skill, those are the things that stand out. Holy shit, this guy's reaction times are insane. Oh my god, he's crazy fast and accurate. Oh my god, he is humiliating his opponents by being both a bully and their best friend the entire time before he kills them. But there is there's a real subtle kind of substratum of skill that I think also informs Jean Silva's success. He's a difficult guy to get a good position on.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was that he was talking about, and he just nailed what the right counter would be to hit this person with, and he was talking about another fighter, and you're just oh no, he really does think about this stuff.
Yeah. There is more there than just natural ability. Maybe the natural ability in part allows him to see these things, but I think he's a much more cognizant fighter than you might like to think, right? Just based on what an obvious freak he also is. He's like Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr., a true natural fighter, also very knowledgeable, very sharp. He knew what he was doing. It was not just, he wasn't a savant. He was actually a student of the game.
He does, I think, share another flaw of the fighting nerds. Cagecraft.
Mm-hmm.
He's a person who is, as you said, like he's basically paying 100% attention to where his opponent is in relation to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he is not paying very much attention at all in terms of where he is in the cage.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were some of those hiccups against Dober were the times when like Dober was forcing him up against the cage,
mm-hmm.
and Silva was often just like shelling up and then trying to throw a big punch to make Dober go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Lopez is bigger than Dober. I'm not actually sure whether that's the case. I mean, Dober is obviously a lightweight, but
he must be. Lopez is like 5'11".
Yeah, but Lopez again as the new Brian Ortega is the biggest. Like one of the biggest featherweights I've ever seen, with the exception of that time when Mike Davis was still making featherweight, when I was just like, how are you a large 6'2" featherweight?
Yeah, he is 3 inches taller and has 2.5 more inches of reach than Drew Dober.
Yeah, and not a skinny guy.
No.
But also just hasn't gone through the process of learning to be technical that Drew Dober has gone through. Hasn't gone through the long process of learning how to be a violent man that Drew Dober did. So his more simplified game may make him simply more threatening to someone like John Silva, because he just doesn't try and keep himself safe.
Yeah.
Admittedly, this may lead to him just getting his head torn off, because his game is built around the idea that he's immortal, and John Silva is a giant freak. But it also may mean that like John Silva could throw one of his insane spinning attacks with maximum athleticism, and it could bounce off Diego Lopez's head, who will then, as he did to Brian Ortega, simply punch him 3 times.
Yep. And offensively, Lopez has pretty good punching form. It's the one area of technique where you're like, ooh, his hands are fast, and those are tight combinations. Jab, uppercut, left hook, all well thrown.
Yeah, because he just sacrifices defense for just always having his base under him and not caring if he gets hit. He's just always looking for the opponent to see if he can hit them back as hard as he possibly can.
It's an interesting point, because I think the psychological warfare is itself a pretty major part of John Silva's game. Yeah.
If he's up against someone who simply doesn't care that, John Silva has the power of a god resting in his fists, does his, tricky offense, what is John Silva's, most reliable offensive tool? Is it that lunging jab that he throws once every, he throws it no more than he throws almost any other strike, let's be honest.
Yep.
It's quick and it's dangerous like everything he does, but, he has no actual, he's not Alexander Volkanovski here.
No.
Who's just how do I take apart this guy with jab, low kick, and counter right hand?
Right. Positionally, he's somewhat similar, I think, to Volkanovski in how he tries to close off the lines of entry to his opponent very diligently, but yeah, it's mostly just positioning. And Volkanovski, there are actually a lot of consistent threats to back that up. Not to mention a lot of dangerous counters that come when you try to punish those to punish those threats that he's producing.
And generally very good cagecraft.
Absolutely, yes.
So, I mean, in the end, I think I probably still have to go with Jean Silva. There's just too many. There's just too many insane intangibles that he's bringing to the table, whereas Lopez is essentially bringing 2
Yeah.
which are power and durability. But
they're big intangibles.
Yeah, some of the best. But yeah, it is definitely one of those fights where I think he might be he's probably still going to remain the undefeated fighting nerd, but there might be some like really scary moments by the cage. Like he might get badly hurt. Again, I think he appears to be very mentally tough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, any moments where things started to look like Drew Dober might be pulling his way back into the fight, he was completely unfazed by.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like he's as I said, he's just to go with everything else. He's difficult to discourage, but I think he might get hurt. I think he might get hurt, like maybe quite badly at some point. Or he could just knock Diego Lopez out incredibly quickly, because Diego Lopez has just never accounted for the fact that someone can actually hit hard enough to just knock him out.
Yeah. That's why I think it's pretty inevitable that this fight will boil over. Even if it doesn't happen right away, Lopez is certainly not averse to slow starts. I mean, he's not averse to crazy fast starts either. But particularly in these main events, I mean, he really worked his way in against Volkanovski and got his ass kicked a good bit before he started really pressing and ended the fight pressing really hard. And I think Jean Silva will be perfectly happy to try to play Matador against him and keep him out and force him to lead. But, you know, like, once Lopez starts getting hit, like, what's going to happen? He is going to intensify the fight that he is trying to force on Jean Silva. He's going to try to force it harder.
Yep.
And even if it doesn't come with, like, slip counters and stuff, some of the stuff that Lopez can do, he will just take shots to give them back. And there's only so much kind of subtle positional operating you can do without throwing combinations and actually mixing it up in the pocket from time to time. Volkanovski couldn't avoid it, and Volkanovski is a much busier fighter than Jean Silva. So yeah, I think it's a phenomenal main event, to be honest. Just a guaranteed action matchup. And I think I'll pick Jean Silva as well, but yeah, I don't know. He's a true athletic cheater, but I don't know how far his actual depth of skill runs.
Yeah, in many ways the worst outcome. Although it will be impressive from a, like, oh my god, that can happen, outcome will be him just instantly murdering Diego.
Yeah, I would be surprised by that, though. I mean, Lopez is so goddamn durable.
Yeah, as I said, it would be a great holy shit moment, but it would also be like, I don't know anything about this guy other than he hits harder than God.
Yeah. Are we expecting mostly striking? I mean, we haven't really touched on the grappling aspect. Silva has been vulnerable to takedowns in past fights, but then he was ready for them against Bryce Mitchell, and Mitchell didn't even get fucking close on taking him down. He bothered to prepare for that one, and it was simply a non-issue.
Is Diego Lopez, again, the new Brian Ortega, good at taking people down? True,
yeah. I was wondering if he might try, but I'm not sure if it really matters whether he tries or not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. You could look at Jean Silva and be like, he got taken down by Charles Jourdain, for example. A bunch of times, but I think he simply wasn't paying attention to it.
Yep.
Because he really proved against Mitchell he can have tremendous defensive wrestling when he cares to. So yeah.
Yep.
Guaranteed action fight. Fantastic main event. Really looking forward to it.
Also the roof is going to be coming off.
Oh yeah.
as we saw in France last week, it's great to have
Absolutely.
a main event that the local crowd is really invested in. So, yeah, it will be very, very fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can't wait. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, another event where surely the roof will be coming off. Oh, wait, where is this happening? Is it in Abu Dhabi?
I think it might be, yeah.
No, it's in Vegas.
Oh, okay.
All right. So there will be crowd noise during Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford. And we're going to talk about that after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk boxing. Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford. A genuine super fight is happening this weekend. And Phil, you and I have had the devil of a time trying to picture what this fight is going to look like.
This sucks. I like it. I want to just be able to pick a fight where I'm like, I bet this guy can't fight against southpaws because I've never seen him do it.
Yep.
Then it would be easy. No, this is like, I don't want to pick who's going to win in fights between people that know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I want giant gaping flaws that I can point out that are obvious to anyone apart from the fighter themselves.
Yeah.
What is this?
Boxing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, like, the elephant in the room is the fact that Canelo Alvarez will be the elephant in the ring. Mm-hmm. This is a fight happening at super middleweight, 168-pound limit. And Terence Crawford's highest weight fight was his last bout against Israel, I'm forgetting the guy's name, Madrimov. And that was at 154, super welterweight. So this fight is happening 14 pounds higher than Crawford's heaviest ever fight. On the other hand, it is kind of weird to think about Canelo as the bigger man in a couple particulars. Canelo himself was a career welter and super welterweight, has been middleweight and super middleweight for quite some time now, but is almost always, at least in terms of height and reach, the smaller man in the ring. And that will not be any different here. Terence Crawford, I believe, I'll have to double check my numbers, but I think Terence Crawford is let's see. Canelo's 5'7.5". Terence Crawford's 5'8". Okay. And does have nearly 4 inches reach on him. But it's weird to think that this fight is happening like 2 or 3 full weight classes above where Crawford's entire career has taken place. And yet he's not actually even shorter, or less rangy than Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Canelo is built like a fridge. I think you could argue that Canelo used to be a weight bully as a welter and super welterweight. And I think you could argue that Terence Crawford has been a bit of a size bully for his entire career, being a pretty big welterweight.
Yeah. But yeah, there is, as with all these things, there is the experience of moving up, which is at least as important as actual physicality of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Canelo has fought, as you mentioned, over a very wide range of weights and has been relatively comfortable in all of them. I think, Bivol basically tells us about how high he can possibly go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Crawford has always been fighting within like a much more limited weight range. And yeah, this is an enormous jump to make.
Yes.
Boxing weight classes are, typically are much closer together than MMA ones. And yeah, even then, there are clear examples of like big hitters jumping weight classes and then suddenly being bullied a little bit. Under that metric, this definitely does feel like the kind of fight where I would traditionally favor Canelo.
Yeah.
I just would not be able to trust Crawford to be able to hold on to his dynamism up a weight class. Like, I think like Hearns versus Hagler. Mm-hmm. Like Hearns was an incredibly, obviously an incredibly devastating hitter, as well as extremely technical, as well as an extremely technical boxer in his own right. But who, just destroyed everyone that he was up against. And then went up to fight Hagler, who was a, immensely tough, slightly bigger, also world-class technician.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, they had one of the greatest fights of all time, the instant death touch was no longer there.
Yeah. He did almost immediately hurt Hagler, to be fair.
Yes.
With like the first punch he scored, but couldn't put him away. And did get bullied.
Yep. And and that was a much smaller, that was light middleweight to middleweight. This is
right.
This is a much, much bigger jump for Crawford to be making. And and we're talking someone who has, this is one of the things that was really like befuddling us when we were talking through this before the card itself.
Mm-hmm.
Crawford, the sheer fluidity of Crawford as a fighter, like the fact that he can look quite hittable sometimes, and then sometimes he can look like the best defensive fighter ever. Sometimes he can look super aggressive. Sometimes he can be a little bit tepid.
Yeah, you don't mean fluidity like the smoothness of his technique. You mean the changeability of his skill sets and strategies.
Mutability, more than fluidity, I think I'm trying to say here. And it makes it very, very difficult to know what kind of Crawford you're going to get in there. But one of the notable factors is that he is one of these guys whose all of his fights are essentially punctuated by him hurting his opponent at some point. There are always pivot points, whether it's him finishing them or whether it's just getting a significant knockdown or just kind of driving the fight out of them like he did Errol Spence. And
it usually does result in a finish, right? Like
yes.
That is a thing that stands out about Crawford as a high-level fighter. Most fighters stop knocking out all of their opponents once they reach the real upper echelon of their division. That is not the case with Terence Crawford.
Mm-hmm.
It does make you wonder the extent to which his power is essential to his ability to win, right?
Yeah, that's the main thing, because obviously you've got to say to yourself, whatever happens, it will be absolutely shocking. We said this about Jean Silva, Diego Lopez, or whatever, but this is a completely different level. It will be shocking if Crawford knocks out Canelo.
Not only is Canelo exceptionally durable, I think maybe the only time he has been really visibly hurt in a fight was like before he was Canelo Alvarez, like early career. But in addition to that, he's a tremendous defensive technician. So when you hit him clean, he doesn't get hurt, and also good luck hitting him clean with any regularity.
Yep.
So yeah, it would be a huge shock. And yeah, that brings us to one of the inherently vexing questions of this matchup. Like, what does Terence Crawford look like against an opponent that he may not be able to hurt at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other, one of the other significant questions is, where's Canelo at?
Yeah.
Because his last fight against, is it Skull?
Yeah, William Skull.
The guy that he fought was dreadful and low-paced and, admittedly, at least partially due to Skull running away from him, but, bad.
Mm-hmm.
And, and Canelo has always been a, pretty leaden-footed boxer, frankly, who makes who really makes it work with incredible head and trunk movement, amazing eyes, incredible counterpunching, durability, and power. Like he's an immense defensive technician without actually being light-footed in any way.
Right.
And the question is, if he's losing pace, and he's always, frankly, been slow, can Terence Crawford pull yet another style out of the hat and simply outpoint him from the outside?
People have tried.
Mm-hmm.
People have tried. Yeah, so there's two kinds of fights Canelo has at least come close to losing, if not actually lost a couple times. One kind, well, I'm not sure where the Floyd Mayweather fight actually sits. That was a fight where he was just there are points of that fight where Mayweather is stalking him, and there are points where Mayweather is gliding around on the outside. That was just a different level of experience and skill. I actually view that fight as a turning point where Canelo became the defensive fighter he is now. That's a pivot point in his career, I think. You recall he had that fight. How soon was the Austin Trout fight after he fought Mayweather? I think it was shortly after.
Yeah, it feels like it was a couple years. Actually, maybe not. Was it even after?
I think you're right. Which fight am I thinking of? Yeah, that was before. Austin Trout was before.
Yeah.
He hit Trout with that big uppercut, I remember. I'm trying to think what came after that where I was like, oh shit, Canelo is extremely slick suddenly. Shit, maybe it happened almost immediately after. He was displaying great defense and counterpunching against Angulo and of course James Kirkland. Completely outclassed a shot James Kirkland in that fight. So that one kind of stands apart. But there are other fights. So of course, he lost to Dimitri Bivol, somewhat recently. And Bivol just kind of outworked him. Canelo has never been a particularly high output fighter. And Bivol took advantage of that in addition to his kind of leaden-footedness. By just piling up a massive amount of work on him. Even if he was bouncing 8 out of every 10 shots off of Canelo's guard, he was constantly stringing together these long salvos that gave him little openings and made it difficult for Canelo to kind of get out of the box.
Yep.
And then the other kind of fight, and I think you could argue that there's an element of that in the Golovkin fight as well, particularly the first one. When Golovkin was not quite as shot as he was in their rematch. And Canelo played the part of the slickster, the outfighter and counterpuncher there. And Golovkin just slowly built up the momentum until that fight became, at best for Canelo, very, very close and difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the guys who just run circles around Canelo. You have guys like Erislandy Lara. To an extent, I think Austin Trout also was difficult in that same way.
Are we giving too much credit to Amir Khan if he said? I mean, even though this was an inevitability.
And Billy Joe Saunders also gave Canelo actually quite a lot of trouble before Canelo kind of turned things around midway through that fight. But he was a very frustrating kind of opponent. Can Terence Crawford do that? Because, I mean, I'm thinking like this is a way to beat Canelo, or at least to neutralize him. But there's really only a couple names of guys who have notably had success. Most of them have still lost to Canelo. And a much longer list of guys who have tried that game and found it actually much more difficult than they thought. Like Jermell Charlo, which is maybe pertinent to the is Canelo losing a step conversation, because that was just in September of 2023. It was only 2 years ago. And Charlo thought he was going to outslick Canelo. And what he found is that Canelo is actually really good if he doesn't have super quick feet or great agility throughout a whole fight. He's really good at corralling his opponents with his punches. And you can spend a lot of time moving away from him, but if you can't land, you're just going to lose anyway. And he just could not, he just had the world of trouble trying to touch Canelo in any way that allowed him to really alleviate the pressure. And a lot of people called Charlo out for that, because of course he had been calling Canelo out for ages, he and his brother, and they were like, oh, you had this guy's name in your mouth and then you ran away from him the whole fight. I think you have to give some credit for how difficult it was, that Charlo just did not realize how difficult it would be to make that game plan actually work. But Terence Crawford is not Jermell Charlo.
Yeah.
The huge weight jump is the real problem to wrap my head around here, because I know Terence Crawford is a rule-breakingly great fighter. Like a special level of focus and determination and resourcefulness, plus tremendous foot and hand speed and power, everything. He is a naturally great boxer. And maybe he can make that kind of game work in a way that somebody like Jermell Charlo struggled with. There's also the fact that Erislandy Lara, who I still think is one of Canelo's most frustrating fights ever, was a southpaw.
Yeah.
And I know you may have mentioned at the top of this segment.
Yeah, we can do MMA analysis.
We can't just say, is this guy a southpaw? Okay, I know what's going to happen. But I do think that was a particular area of difficulty for Canelo, combined with Lara's style. He just couldn't get... Yeah, go on.
I think the southpaw dynamic might be an example. I think it's an area of volatility, less than it might be like a specific advantage. Because I think that's also where Crawford tends to get hit. Is when he's going southpaw. I think he mostly does it to break up the rhythm, but a lot of the time I think he only does it when he's confident that he's figured his opponent out, like against Kell Brook. I think maybe he was just that confident against Spence that he was just like, we're going to do it right from the beginning, who knows. But he has gotten clipped by like straight rights down the middle a few times, which is, again, one of Canelo's, like, one of his punches, one of his and left hook, straight right are really the sort of the signature Canelo punches. So I think of it as like it's an area of like greater risk for either man.
Yeah, you might have a point. Yeah, this is the thing with Crawford, though. Like you said, sometimes he will just sort of not be defensively aware or responsible. In fact, this happened in his super welterweight fight that he just had with I keep forgetting, Madrimov. There's like a moment, I want to say in like round 5 or so, where all the things you were just mentioning start to happen. Like the straight right just starts getting through his guard and surprising him. He's kind of lost track of the distance, or lost track of the cues that precede Madrimov's punches, and he starts getting surprised, and he even does switch stance at the end of this round. He goes back to orthodox, having fought the entirety of the fight basically as a lefty. But then he comes out in the next round, southpaw again, and Madrimov just can't touch him anymore. He just like dials back in. He gets a little more aggressive, starts putting his jab on Madrimov and driving him back a bit, but also he goes back to counterpunching mode and is just slipping and firing back really well. It's the mutability of Terence Crawford's game that is probably what makes him so uniquely dangerous as against elite opponents, and also makes it really difficult to like get a concrete picture of what his fights are going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do you wrap your head around Terence Crawford? It's weird because Canelo Alvarez is an undeniably great fighter, but Crawford somehow retains this kind of like unknowable quality.
Yeah.
Canelo,
I mean, you know, you look at Canelo and you can see what you're getting. It's at the very highest level.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's very clear. And yeah, Crawford is, he's just, he can be aggressive. He can be a slickster. He can be a puncher. He can fight incredibly well out of either stance. Yeah, you can just never tell.
Yeah. It's the Crawfordness and the weight class change that makes this fight so difficult to figure out.
And that still, let's be honest, dreadful fight against Skull.
Yeah.
That's actually because, you know, it's one thing to be like, this guy's trying not to do anything. But it's not like Canelo was having, you know, it's not like he was on his bike to the extent that Canelo couldn't close him down. Canelo still looked very, very tentative.
Flat. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a thing that happens in Canelo fights, yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm ready to say that that's indicative of Canelo being done, personally. Because
he doesn't have to be done, but he has to be functioning at a very high level to beat someone as good as Crawford.
Yeah.
Even with the weight class change. As I said, without Canelo looking slightly suspect and me being worried about where he was, this is simply a style matchup where I think I would just pick him out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
The weight class change, the power translation, all this kind of stuff. You know, Crawford has to hurt people, but he can't. It's going to be incredibly dangerous for him to mix it up in the pocket with someone like Canelo. I'd actually be more, despite their recent records. Again, if I hadn't looked at Canelo and thought he's on the downslope, I would give more of a chance of Canelo hurting Crawford than the other way around.
Yeah. Canelo has been going almost exclusively decisions in his middleweight and super middleweight career, but he has also almost exclusively been putting his opponents down at least once per fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I said, I would pick Canelo out of hand almost every time in this kind of matchup. It's just, and I think boxing, people being actually good in boxing means that the margins are that much, mean that much more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't jump up to fight someone and then find that they're actually completely lacking in a given skill set. You can't be Conor McGregor and go up to fight Eddie Alvarez and then find out that Eddie Alvarez can't actually close distance at all.
Right.
And never has. I think I'm going to pick Crawford. Again, my instincts would always be to pick Canelo in this fight, but I just don't like how he was looking. And in his last fight, and conversely, like Crawford's last fight was an absolutely sensational demolition job where he looked like the best boxer on the planet.
You're not talking about Madrimov. You're talking about Spence.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had that one fight in between where he looked good, but did not demolish his first ever super welterweight opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I do wonder about the mobility of Crawford. The southpaw thing, I think, does actually play a factor. Like, I just think they historically make Canelo look. It's not like the MMA thing where it's like, oh, he forgets to throw his jab because some idiot convinced him it doesn't work. Like, no, Canelo still uses his full arsenal and still picks all the same targets. He makes it work. It makes his footwork look more cumbersome typically, though. It makes his sort of essential slow-footedness
more cumbersomer.
More cumbersomer, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, Billy Joe Saunders. There's even like John Ryder was not much of an opponent. That was his the last southpaw he fought, and even that one, like, this is not a mobile, long range sniping southpaw. There are still moments, however, where I think Canelo looks kind of awkward on his feet and gets outmaneuvered in ways that I don't think he just doesn't happen against orthodox opponents. So I do wonder about that element. It's very hard for me to convince myself to pick Crawford with the 14-pound weight jump, though. It's such a big change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like even some of our all-time great...
And also just things like the competition level. You know, Canelo is just undeniably just fought better people than Crawford has over the course of his career.
Well, he's had a longer career, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
He's fought his fair share.
Yeah,
of,
but he fought
jobbers
Mayweather
too.
when he was pretty young.
Yeah,
admittedly, you know, much bigger than him and so on and so forth. But yeah, he has, you know, explored different weight classes and you know, pushed himself as far as he possibly could. Canelo has always been chasing greatness.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, I mean, what the hell? I'm going to pick Crawford too, because I just think Crawford is magic, but it feels like an unsensible pick in so many ways.
Yeah.
Like, even with a couple sort of lumpy performances from Canelo, like, how many times has it happened where like, this guy's done, and then he's like, oh, he took this fight really seriously, he was locked in, he just recaptured the magic once again. Like, I kind of expect that. I kind of expect Canelo to look good.
Yeah.
Just have a feeling,
you know,
he will.
Even if he's a more understandable fighter than Crawford, he is still a fantastically unique one.
Utterly competent.
You know, this is a skill set that you simply cannot compare to anyone.
Exactly. He is just incredibly, rock solidly competent across the board.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess it's a gut pick. I think the time is right, and Terence Crawford is a scary man, and maybe he can make something happen, but it doesn't feel right. I should probably be picking Canelo, but when have I ever been good at picking fights, huh?
Very true.
Why start now?
All I'm sad is that now you dragged me down with you. You guaranteed.
You picked him first. I think I'm only picking him because you picked him, and I want to fit in. Do you like me, Phil?
God, is this what being popular is like?
A bunch of
terrible,
pathetic worms clamoring for your approval. Yeah.
I'll
Speaking
go
of
back to
which,
being alone.
sound off in the comments. Who do you think is going to win? We might like you if you agree with us.
Tell us what morons we are.
Well, not if you want to be in with the cool guys. Don't do that. Tell us how smart you think we are. And maybe you'll get on the show like that one guy that one time. All right. Let's take a break. And while we're still not far from the subject of picking fights incorrectly, when we come back, we're going to talk about Caio Borralho, Nassourdine, Imavov after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, let's talk about Nassourdine Imavov and Caio Borralho, the main event of last weekend's UFC Paris card. First of all, you mentioned this earlier in the show, Phil. What fun it is to have an electric live audience for a fight card. Remember when we took that for granted? That was just a thing that happened sort of more as a rule. It was an exception when the card sucked, or when the crowd sucked, rather.
Mm-hmm.
These Frenchmen were going apeshit for the entirety of this card, and why shouldn't they? This card was almost exclusively finishes.
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me of, the old, fight for the troops dynamic, where clearly the kind of, the testosterone of just playing to an entire room full of soldiers just kind of saturated the cage, and everyone went absolutely berserk. It reminded me of that, but that couldn't be possible because they were all French.
Maybe it's just that people fight better in France and not necessarily the French themselves.
Yeah.
Historically, several people have fought really effectively in France. Sometimes the French, more recently not the French, but still, something about that stretch of land that makes military
something about
force.
The smell of garlic and cheese just drives people to violence. That's why they banned MMA in the first place.
It was just, I think it was a case of a feedback loop where the energy was so good, right from the start, and people were scoring finishes, that, the fighters were responding to that and really just like going in there to lay it all on the line. It really did have the feel of a especially packed fight for the troops card. And I think an underrated aspect of why Apex cards suck so much, and I swear, if they could just pack that room with people, it would feel like a fight for the troops card more often. Yeah,
you don't need that many people to sound like a crowd, but when it's literally some tiny number of people that you can hear the individuals.
Yeah, James Tony Vasily Jurov. James Tony Vasily Jurov had 1,500 people in like a little casino ballroom kind of setting. And that was a crazy fucking war with a lot of crowd energy that comes through even on the video. Like a small room packed with rabid fans is just as cool as a giant arena. But it does make a difference, not just to the viewing experience, but I think it often makes a difference to the fighters too. These guys respond to that energy. But as for the fight itself, Imavov versus Borralho, did we both pick Borralho here?
No.
You picked Imavov?
Yeah.
Good on you. All right. Well, rub it in.
Now, remember, well, this is what what I've decided is going to be my my picking style from now on, is that I'm going to list out all the reasons why you should pick the other guy.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to be like, but I think you should pick think you should pick this guy.
Yep. Hey. It's basically what you did for Canelo Crawford.
Yeah, exactly. That's just what I'm going to do now. I'm going to be like, no, you should always pick like this, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, I've overthought my way into an incorrect pick, so now I will simply pick the other one.
Yep.
Well, as it turned out, I thought this was the first time I have ever seen Nassourdine Imavov and thought, that man is a contender.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, this was a very frustrating fight from Caio Borralho. And really put a point on some of the team-wide Fighting Nerds issues that I had just started to identify before this fight. But it was an exceptionally good and consistent performance from Nassourdine Imavov as well. No sign of slowing down. No, backwards decision making. And while I can't say that he looked like a guy who knew he could throw his jab against a southpaw, knew he could throw his jab against a southpaw from the beginning, he did figure out that he could as the fight wore on.
Yep.
So across the board, just 5 rounds of really very high level counterpunching from Nassourdine Imavov. And that was the other notable thing. It was largely a counterpunching performance from him, which is not something we get to see very often in MMA.
Yeah. And I think, there was also the fact that he sort of pre-adjusted to the fact that he wasn't going to be landing his jab going in early, because the later parts of the fight, he was jabbing more. The early parts, he was kind of substituting his range weapon as being that that front snap kick to the body.
Mm-hmm.
So he was at least against someone who, again, doesn't typically throw that much and concede space perhaps more than he should. He was at least keeping the initiative bar firmly on his side.
Yeah, and also just a lot of straight up positional pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Even when he wasn't taking the lead, he recognized that simply by being the guy going forward, he was going to keep Borralho on the back foot for most of the fight. Borralho is constantly trying to maintain that long range. And Imavov was able to push him around most of the fight just by going after him with footwork alone.
Yeah.
What was particularly frustrating about Borralho's performance here, it was something that I noted when we talked about his kind of breakthrough win against Jared Cannonier. I pointed out that when he was fighting Cannonier, he threw very few combinations of any kind.
Yep.
And whenever he did, without exception, he hurt Jared Cannonier. He would land really flush. And we're just talking 1-2s. I'm not talking about 5-punch combos.
That was the thing, is that when I went back to watch that fight, I went in kind of expecting to pick Borralho in this fight for that being one of the reasons, because I remembered those combination punches.
Yep.
I was like, oh yeah, he's going to be able to force Imavov back and pressure him. And yeah, like you said, you watch them and then you realize you remember them because they are the pivot points of the fight, after which Cannonier is, on wobbly legs.
Yep. And they're very few and far between.
But they are very few and far between.
And that was it's a pathological thing. It's worked into the way Borralho fights, that he just doesn't have much of an instinct to put his shots together. And that was a problem here. And you could see him trying to master it, particularly in the latter half of this fight. He made a somewhat admirable effort for a minute at a time here and there. where he would try to go forward and throw combinations. And as it turned out, Imavov, who looked like a brilliant technician, slipping and firing counters over and over again, really just had that one level of defense.
Yeah.
That first slip. And not only was the defense penetrated when Borralho would push past his entry strike with a follow-up, but even Imavov's counters stopped landing with such regularity when he had convinced himself to throw in combination, simply because of the hand traffic. Like there's a difference when you're moving into the opponent trying to attack them. There's just stuff in the way of whatever they're trying to throw back at you. Whereas if you're trying to dip in and then yank back out of range immediately, the counters are going to land, especially because Imavov's counters were almost always thrown in combination themselves.
Yeah.
So even if Borralho was able to like dip him with a jab and then whip his head back out of range from the right hand, the left hook would catch him.
Yeah. It really felt like Borralho has sort of screwed himself over in a very, like, almost the opposite way to most people who fight open stance do, and that he's become incredibly reliant on landing his jab in the open stance.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't have much of an idea of how to throw his jab away, and he was immensely uncomfortable when he couldn't land it.
Yep.
So the fight just became this sort of repeated exchange of like lead hand traffic, and then Borralho tries to lunge in with the jab, and Imavov bats it to the side, and then simply throws like one of his, as you said, very like pretty arsenal of counters, whether it's that like short right hand or that level change right hook to the body. And yeah, he would drive him back out, and then we'd go back to it again. And yeah, you could just see that, like, if he can't land his jab, and he couldn't find a way to land his jab, he was left incredibly inert.
Right. Which is ass backwards. Like,
yeah.
Part of that, I'm sure, is because I'm pretty sure Borralho is a converted southpaw. He is a right-handed fighter.
Yep.
But like, the opponent not getting hit by your jab there should be some utility to that. Like, because the jab is such an easy shot to land and to throw in multiples, and such an easy thing to threaten with, if you can get the opponent evading your jab, that should be an invitation to follow it up. Right? Like, the guy preventing your jab from landing should never be where your attack just totally falters. It does happen. I mean, shit, we were just talking about that Canelo-Charlo fight. That's basically what happened to Charlo. He couldn't get anything going because he couldn't figure out how to get his jab home. But it's kind of an ass-backwards way of approaching the fight. Like, if the jab isn't landing, it's because you're making the guy do something which should expose him for the stuff that the jab sets up. That's part of the jab's utility as a setup, is that the opponent has to respond defensively to it. But he couldn't, even down to the fifth round, there's like a burst in there where he's trying to go after Imavov, and he is landing, and he just cannot make himself do it consistently enough. And some of that is Imavov's scary counters, which throughout the entire fight were really fast and were thrown in combination, which went to the body and the head, everything. But a lot of it, I think, is just the kind of fighter Borralho has trained himself to be.
Yep. Yeah, he's basically evolved to counter a common flaw in MMA fighters.
Yeah.
Which is that they are completely freaked out by open stance jabs.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was just like, what if this person is simply batting them away and waiting for my lead hand? For my rear hand.
Yep. Not a problem for Imavov.
Yep.
Not only was he not especially susceptible to southpaw jabs, he was especially capable of punishing single strikes.
Yep.
And
that's his thing.
Exactly. And Borralho just kept giving him single strikes. And I think that will do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. Next week, we should try and look and see if we can get a guest. Every time we ask Caio, he's too fucking good for us, but, so Heavy Hands listeners, when you're not praising and or lambasting us in the comments, go on Twitter and bother Kyle McLaughlin at Combat Chronicles, and make him join us to talk about Canelo Alvarez, Terence Crawford next week. And if that doesn't happen, you'll know whose fault it is.
The listeners?
Yes, it's your fault. You should feel bad.
They didn't try hard enough.
Yeah, don't fail us, whatever you do. But we'll be back next week to talk about that. What else do we have on the horizon for the UFC schedule? Looks like we have a week off, actually, after next week's card. So fortunately, we will just get to focus our attention on hopefully all the exciting action that happens this coming weekend. Looking forward to that. I hope to see you all again here next week. And until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.